What's up guys, today I'll be reviewing the brand new CX14E and CX14H from Gearbox. I do just want to disclaim that Gearbox did send me these paddles so that I could review them, but I was the one who reached out to them, so they have no say in how I made this video and all opinions are my own. So with that out of the way, let's dive right in because there's been a lot of talk about these paddles. The first thing you might be wondering is what are the differences from previous models? Well, the CX14s are their own new line, while the CX11s are more so meant to be upgrades of the GX5 and 6 models. Both come in at $200, and both variants of the CX14 are 14 millimeters thick, hence the 14 in the name. This is the thickest paddle that Gearbox has made to date. The idea behind both of these paddles is to help people who are wanting to transition from thicker honeycomb paddles into a Gearbox paddle, since they are traditionally very thin. Generally, Gearbox offers their paddles in a 7.8 and an 8.5 ounce version, but both CX14s only come in at 8 ounces, and there's no power or control model. It is simply just the CX14H and the CX14E. Both paddles have a longer handle coming in at 5 and 5/8 inches, which I am a really big fan of. Ever since I started playing with longer handle paddles, I just can't go back to playing with shorter length ones. The handle on the CX14s feels very solid and well built, and it's pretty easy to perform a two-handed backhand if that's a shot you like to use. So the only difference you have to worry about when looking at these paddles is the face shape. Everything else about them is the same. I'm just gonna mention this briefly, but I really like the design of these paddles. I've been a pretty big fan of companies that are going towards more darker, more sleek looking paddles, and I think both the CX14 models have a really clean, simplistic design that just looks good without trying to do too much. The build quality of Gearbox paddles is next to none. When they came onto the scene, they really tried to build a paddle that would last, because a common complaint in pickleball with traditional polymer paddles is that you'll get dead spots on the face as the honeycomb breaks, or the edge guard glue starts to come up and it starts to peel, or you may even see some people snap their paddles at the handle from the neck. Gearbox paddles are built out of pure carbon fiber, so they're incredibly durable. They also don't have an edge guard since the entire paddle is built out of carbon fiber. Basically, you shouldn't be able to break these under normal play, and it should last you significantly longer than polymer paddles on the market. So if you're someone going through paddles regularly and you're tired of it, Gearbox is the first place I would look for a durable paddle. Another thing that makes the build quality of these unique is that the weight is incredibly accurate. If you've bought polymer paddles in the past, you know that when they say a weight, it's generally a range and it isn't going to be an exact weight. With Gearbox, they're basically dead on with the weight because of the build process and using entirely carbon fiber to construct the paddle. So if precise weight is important for you, this might be a reason to purchase one of these paddles. So these days, everyone is after more and more spin on their paddles. If you haven't already checked it out, I made a video where I compared 29 different paddles to see which one got the most spin. I ran that same test for these Gearbox paddles, and I'm happy to report that they did incredibly well. Gearbox's entire new lineup of every CX11 model and 14 performed exceptionally well, all doing over 1500 RPM. In that video I mentioned previously, the GX6 was only doing 1200 RPM, so a 300 RPM jump is pretty significant. So if you're looking for paddles that get good spin, these will definitely do well in that category. And while we're on that note, I think Gearbox paddles do a pretty good job of disproving a myth a lot of people believe in pickleball. And that is, if the face doesn't have a rough or gritty surface, it won't get good spin. While generally speaking, I do think that this has been true for most paddles on the market, it isn't with these. The face of these is very smooth, yet they get great spin thanks to the solid span technology that Gearbox is using. I was honestly very ready to call out the Hyperbite spin technology as a gimmick, but after seeing the results, it's pretty clear that it actually works. All right, let's talk about the feel of these paddles. If you haven't ever hit a Gearbox paddle before, coming to one from a polymer paddle can be a pretty big shock. The paddles feel extremely solid compared to most polymer paddles on the market. It's honestly hard to explain without you just holding one and hitting the ball for yourself, but just be prepared that it will take some time to adjust to if you haven't used one before. So far, everyone who has play tested these kind of describes it like you're hitting the ball against a wood paddle. It doesn't necessarily feel bad like a wood paddle, it's just that it feels very solid and thick when you're hitting the ball. Again, this kind of goes back to the durability and build quality that I was talking about. These paddles are kind of just built like a tank. On the first session, when me and my brother started hitting these, our dinking was pretty terrible if I'm gonna be honest. We kept hitting everything short or into the net. Initially, we actually didn't like these at all, but we continued testing them over a couple weeks and found that we started warming up to them and getting more used to how they play. Part of what made that initial test session so hard is that these CX14s are soft. Like, personally, I think these are the softest paddles on the market by a long shot. I'm currently using the Diadem Warrior, which is 19 millimeters thick, and these CX14s are very noticeably softer despite being 5 millimeters thinner than the Warrior. I felt like I really had to put some oomph into my swings to get some of these dinks to go over. The paddle seems to take a lot of pace off the ball during blocks as well. Once I got used to this feel and knew that about the paddle, it was much easier to play with because I was able to swing a bit harder and knew that my shots weren't going to go long. I would describe both of these paddles as control paddles rather than power. It doesn't mean you can't get power out of these, but these are very heavily focused on control if you ask me. I think these paddles are best when you're playing from the kitchen. They're perfectly suited for someone who likes to play a traditional, softer and slower game with a lot of dinking, blocking, and resetting. Blocks and resets with these were awesome, specifically backhand slice drops. Some of these balls would land so short in the kitchen that if your opponent was at the baseline, there was no way they were running up to get these. One thing I will say is I did like the paddle quite a bit for indoor gym floor play. While this isn't normally how I would like to play, I don't really have much of a choice when it's 10 degrees and 8 inches of snow outside in Minnesota. One thing advertised by Gearbox is that the sweet spot is a lot bigger or near edge to edge. Personally, I did not find the sweet spot to be any larger than most polymer paddles I've used. To me, it felt slightly smaller than what I'm used to, and off-center shots did not feel as forgiving to me as they do on my Warrior. So to me, the sweet spot only felt about average, but perhaps compared to the previous gen Gearbox paddles, this was a noticeable upgrade. And since I haven't used those much, I just wouldn't be able to tell. I also had my friend Wes demo the CX14, so I'll let him tell you his opinion of these paddles.
Hey, I'm Wes. I'm an aspiring 4-5 player. I normally play with the Engage Encore 6.0, like in a midweight. And tonight I tried the Gearbox CX14, and honestly, everything that the Engage Encore does well, this does just as well, but it feels lighter, it's got a lot more pop at the net. And I've tried some Gearbox paddles in the past, and my main complaint was there wasn't a very big sweet spot, but this one didn't seem to have that problem at all. It was honestly just a really nice experience, and it's a paddle I definitely consider in the future if I were looking to switch. On resets, it was really, really smooth, really soft. I think I hit a number of drop shots tonight that were 10 times better than anything I hit with my normal Engage paddle. On the backhands, I had a little bit of hard time with the slice, and I'm not sure if it's just because the ball doesn't seem to sit on the paddle quite as long, sit on the paddle face quite as long, so they were just kind of skipping. But I think it's something I could dial in with time. The really big benefit was just the reaction speed at the net. I felt like it had a lot more pop without losing that feel and placement. I'm looking to move on from the Encore 6.0. I would consider this one, and I would consider it, right now I'm considering the Pursuit, and I would consider this one as well for sure. I would like to play test both again and kind of demo them side by side and see which one performs better. I like the elongated one for the ground strokes. It was just a little bit slower on the net for me, but I feel like it could be, it might be really good for singles, honestly. I would like to consider it for singles if I ever look to switch to something just purely for a singles paddle.
So at the end of the day, choosing between these paddles is going to come down to what face shape you prefer. I personally like the CX14H the most. I found I mishit the ball less with that paddle. While I probably won't be switching to either of these, I do think these are genuinely great paddles. I just really love my Diadem Warrior right now, which makes power shots feel a bit more effortless for my playstyle. Right now, I definitely prefer to play a faster, stronger game of pickleball, so to me, a paddle this soft just doesn't fit my playstyle very well. But if you are someone looking to transition from a thicker polymer paddle and want something that is unbelievably soft with lots of control and great spin, while also being one of the most durable paddles on the market, then the CX14 paddles are definitely something I would recommend checking out. I would just say that if you're coming from other paddles, be prepared for a transition period and make sure that you get to play test these paddles for a while. You may not enjoy them a ton on your first day, but I think as you warm up to them, you'll start to like them more. So overall, I think Gearbox did a great job, and it'll be exciting to see this paddle in their lineup because it just branches their portfolio of paddles out more and gives more people an opportunity to try something new that's different from all of the polymer paddles on the market. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to click that like button down below and subscribe for more content just like this, and I will catch you guys in the next video.